We are entrusting the day and the endeavor to the Lord. Let's go. Welcome to my channel where I visit many good books, but live in the Bible. My name is Sarah Christine, and today we are going to talk about Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I read this book a long time ago, but it's been in my brain because I'm approaching that infamous age.
I'm 27 years old.
And thinking about Charlotte Lucas and trying to see how my life jives with her. I've no money, no prospects, I'm already a burden on my parents, and I'm frightened. And I've just been going through that. Frankly, it wasn't, as far as point one goes, that long ago that I was driving in the car with someone close to me in my life who I will call Ratacutie, when she turned to me, unprompted, and said, "Why don't you have drive?" And then in a nicer voice, "Well, you do have drive, just not monetary drive." And I was like, okay. Point two, no prospects. Honestly, also relatable because for the better part of the last 3 years, my circle of socialization has included my immediate family, the 12 to 24-month-old babies at church in childcare ministry, and an all-women's Bible study, which, when you consider the laws of heaven and of earth, romantic prospect-wise in those circles, there will be a dearth. And then third, I'm already a burden on my parents. Yes, I will not deny, I am certainly a burden on my parents, but both of them know Christ. And Matthew 11:30 says that in Jesus, their yoke is easy and their burden is light. Love you, Mom and Dad. But the fourth, she says, "And I'm frightened." No, this is where I do not relate to Charlotte Lucas, because Jeremiah 1:17 says, "Do not be dismayed before them, your enemies, or I will dismay you before them." God really tells us, be afraid to be afraid. And we know we have three enemies: the world, our own flesh, and the devil. But it's most frequently been the devil whispering in my ear saying, "You're an old maid, you're 27 years old, you've no money, no prospects, already a burden on your parents." And I just punch in face. And while I'm taking care of his face, God, insert video of Sarah post wisdom tooth surgery.
God?
Gonna kick Satan
Yes.
in the balls.
That is also biblical because Jesus said in Luke 10:18, he saw Satan fall like lightning. And any girl who has ever taken a self-defense class knows the fastest way to drop a man is to kick him in his gonads. All that to say, I do relate to Charlotte Lucas, and presumably some of you do too. But today I want to tell you, we are not to be afraid, we are not to be distressed, and we are certainly not to settle, like Charlotte does, for anything less than an SFR man. What is an SFR man? I will give you a history of this acronym. It begins about a year ago when someone close to me, who I will call the water buffalo, informed me of a most peculiar report that had reached her about a group of guys who had devised an acronym to determine whether or not they were going to pursue a woman. This acronym was BBB. If a girl had the 3 B's, they were pursuing. I will admit, when I first heard that acronym, I did not have the most charitable of guesses as to what the 3 B's were, but it wasn't that bad. These guys were looking for girls that were believers, that were brilliant and beautiful, and that for them was going to be wife material. And the water buffalo was like, okay, cool. But she asked them, well, a girl can be all that, but don't you also want her to be a friend? And their response to that was not unlike the men in Mulan, when Mulan might say, "How about a girl who is your friend, with whom you enjoy spending time?" And the water buffalo was a bit dispirited by that. And when we talked about it, we agreed we're going to start our own acronym. It's not going to be the 3 B's. It will have an F. It will have an F in it, which stands for friend. That's something we're going to look for in a potential husband. Fast forward a few more weeks, and we were having a discussion about the aforementioned dearth of romantic prospects in our respective lives. And in discussing this, we both acknowledged it's not that there aren't men, it's that these are grown men who are acting as if they are high school freshmen. And 1 Corinthians 13:11 says that once I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, I reasoned like a child, but when I became a man, I put aside childish things. And there were a fair few brothers in Christ who could not say that in both of our lives. And as we were discussing why that was such a block to potential romance, at least from our perspective, we agreed that the issue there was going to be an inability on our part to respect a man who still thought, still acted, and still reasoned like a child. And Ephesians 5:33 says, husbands are to love their wives, and wives are to respect their husbands. And so for us, in considering a romantic prospect who we know we are commanded by God to respect, we don't want to go in picking someone that we feel we have to babysit for various reasons. And so we added an R to our acronym. Fast forward a few months, and I was staying in DC with a friend who I will call Tennessee, C as in cheese, and she was talking about how her husband is so patient that she constantly feels, oh man, I gotta be more patient. Look at him, he's so patient with me, with everybody. And as she was saying that, another conversation came into my head that I had had with another friend who I will call the belle of the ball, because she was a professional basketball player and is a total Southern belle, where we had discussed that we are looking for Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpening iron men. We are not interested in swinging our blades against a cheese stick. We want to be with someone who will strengthen us and sharpen us. And Ephesians 6:17 says that the sword of the Spirit is the word of God. And John 1:14 says the word became flesh and dwelt among us. So if we link all that up, Jesus, who is the word made flesh, is also the sword of the Spirit. And that strengthening and sharpening, that iron sharpening iron that we want in a life partner, is supposed to conform us to the likeness of the sword of the Spirit, Jesus. So when Tennessee, C as in cheese, was talking about how her husband, by his patience, makes her want to be more patient, I kept thinking, he's an iron sharpening iron man. You're not swinging your sword against a cheese stick in him. You're swinging your sword against someone who is going to sharpen you and strengthen you to the likeness of Jesus. And that is what we want. We want someone who's going to make you better. And so when the water buffalo and I reconvened, I told her, I think I've got our final letter. I think it's S. I think it's going to be sanctifying, someone that makes you more like Jesus. We want a friend, someone we enjoy, someone we respect, we don't feel we have to babysit, and someone who makes us more like Christ. And as we were discussing this, I like acronyms, I find them very helpful, but I thought we got to rearrange this to be an SFR man, a suffer man, because John 16:33 promises that in this life you will have trouble, but take heart because Jesus has overcome the world. But we are promised some sucking. We are promised that there are going to be times when trial and tribulation come. And when they come, who do you want in the trenches with you? You want a sanctifying friend that you respect, someone that will encourage you, strengthen you, make you more like Jesus, someone that when the mustard gas is up to your neck, you're still looking at them like, I enjoy being with you. And someone you respect, someone you don't have to babysit in the trenches, where they're not trying to, plug in an Xbox into the mud puddle. So that's the history of the SFR man. And now we're going to talk about how the romantic prospects, Mr. Collins, Mr. Wickham, and Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice measure up against that standard. And we're going to see what happens when a potential romantic partner isn't and then is a sanctifying friend that you respect. However, we're going to go through these men asking first, Does Elizabeth enjoy them? Then does she respect them? And then do they sanctify her? Because I personally think it's easiest to detect those things in that order. You can tell pretty early on, do you enjoy this person? You can tell pretty early on, are there clear impediments to respecting this person? But that question of what are their virtues, what are their traits that will exhort you on to be more like Jesus, that takes a little bit longer. So we're going to go through in that order. First up, Mr. Collins. And first question, does Elizabeth enjoy him? We just got to flip to the Netherfield ball, where Mr. Collins has secured Elizabeth's hand for the first 2 dances. And Elizabeth thinks to herself, the first 2 dances, however, brought a return of distress. They were dances of mortification. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologizing instead of attending and often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner for a couple of dances can give. The moment of her release from him was ecstasy. So suffice to say, she does not enjoy spending time with him. Second question, does Elizabeth respect Mr. Collins? And we don't need to flip any more than a few pages on to determine no. She does have to babysit him, because when he finds out at that Netherfield ball that the nephew of his esteemed Lady Catherine de Bourgh is in attendance, he impertinently introduces himself to Mr. Darcy, much to Elizabeth's chagrin. And then, as if that were not enough, he gets up and gives this long speech praising, of course, Lady Catherine de Bourgh and Mr. Darcy. And Elizabeth is just like, oh my gosh, sir. And I heard a professor once say, prudence is reading the room. And it's no surprise to me that Mr. Collins is so imprudent, because he tells them, I never read novels, so no surprise he can't read a room. And frankly, even though he is a minister, I do not think he read his Bible, because Proverbs 10:19 says that where there are many words, sin is unavoidable. But the one who guards their mouth is prudent. So maybe not immaturity being the foil to respect in this instance, but different I words, impertinence and imprudence. Third question, is Mr. Collins an iron sharpening iron man? No. When Elizabeth is talking to her sister Jane after Mr. Collins' successful proposal to Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth tells Jane, my dear Jane, Mr. Collins is a conceited, pompous, narrow-minded, silly man. You know he is, as well as I do, and you must feel as well as I do, that the woman who married him cannot have a proper way of thinking. Narrow-mindedness, conceit, pompousness, silliness are not traits that are going to be particularly sanctifying. They're not going to be sharpening you into the likeness of Christ. So Mr. Collins is definitely a cheese stick man. Actually, we'll say that he is a boiled potato, his favorite vegetable.
What a superbly featured room, and what excellent boiled potatoes.
And a boiled potato is not going to be helpful in sharpening your blade. So is Mr. Collins a sanctifying friend that Elizabeth can respect? No. He is a conceited, pompous, narrow-minded, silly, boiled potato who she rightly assesses could not make her happy. So we move on to bachelor number 2. None other than Mr. George Wickham. We again ask that first question, does Elizabeth enjoy him? And initially, yes. She says that he has a captivating softness about him, that he has all the charms of person and address that can captivate a woman. So initially, she enjoys him very much. But when we get to that second question, does she respect him? This is where cracks start to show, because not too long into their acquaintance, he goes from favoring her with his attentions and agreeableness to shifting focus to one Miss King, who has acquired 10,000 pounds quite recently. And we have an instance of a man being inconsistent. I think a lot of I words are foils for respect. We have immaturity, we have imprudence, impertinence, and now we have inconstancy, where he likes one girl, then he likes the one that's got the most money. And Elizabeth and her aunt have a conversation about how Wickham seems quite mercenary. He's just grasping for whatever he can get. And that is, again, not a trait where you're going to have respect. And by the end of the book, we have another I word that is a foil to respect. Impudence, because when Wickham waltzes into the Bennet's house after throwing their family into scandal and distress by running off with the youngest Miss Bennet, Lydia, he walks into their house completely at ease, and Elizabeth thinks to herself, Elizabeth had not before believed him quite equal to such assurance, but she sat down, resolving within herself to draw no limit in future to the impudence of an impudent man. She blushed, and Jane blushed, but the cheeks of the two who had caused their confusion suffered no variation of color. Another way to detect if respect is going to be an issue is if, as Edward Fairfax Rochester said in Jane Eyre, a person makes you blush to own them, where you think to yourself, I'm so embarrassed to be associated with this person. As Elizabeth here is with Wickham. She blushes because of the impudence of this impudent man. So does she respect him? No. Which should come as no surprise and gets to the final question of, is he an iron sharpening iron man? Does he have virtues? Again, I'm going to appeal to Edward Fairfax Rochester when he puts the question to Jane, is this man good because of his guiltlessness of vice or prowess in virtue? Because those are different things. A boiled potato can be guiltless of vice, but can have no prowess in virtue. So the question of iron sharpening iron is prowess in virtue. We have already seen that George Wickham is not guiltless of vice. Could he have prowess in virtue? The answer to that is no. Page 224. When after Elizabeth got the letter from Mr. Darcy that detailed Wickham's perfidiousness, Elizabeth, trying to come to Wickham's defense, thinks to herself, Wickham's countenance, voice, and manner had established him at once in the possession of every virtue. She tried to recollect some instance of goodness, some distinguished trait of integrity or benevolence, but no such recollection befriended her. She could see him instantly before her in every charm of air and address, but she could remember no more substantial good than the general approbation of the neighborhood and the regard which his social powers had gained him in the mess. No more substantial good is the operative phrase when it comes to, is someone an iron sharpening iron man? Because someone can have nothing wrong with them, can be a boiled potato, guiltless of vice, but have no more substantial good, no prowess in virtue. And that is certainly, per Elizabeth's own musing, a description of Mr. Wickham. And though he is not a boiled potato, I will say, he is a Lay's potato chip. I think this is perfect because it's red, like his uniform. W for Wickham, wavy for his moral compass, and this will taste good for a moment, but is not contributing to the health of your body. And frankly, I'm just going to insert an image here of Wickham with his ponytail, because you cannot look at that ponytail and not say that man is full of seed oils.
Allow me to oblige.
Oh, no, Mr. Wickham, please.
So, if Mr. Collins is a silly, pompous, narrow-minded, boiled potato, Wickham is a Lay's wavily, moral compassed potato chip that is full of seed oils and not good for the health of Elizabeth. This brings us to bachelor number 3, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. And is he a sanctifying friend that Elizabeth respects? Does she enjoy him, respect him? Is he an iron sharpening iron man? Initially, no, on all counts. Their first meeting doesn't exactly start off well when she overhears him tell Bingley that Elizabeth is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. That does not, unsurprisingly, inspire the friendliest of feelings in her, and when she hears the tales told by Wickham about Mr. Darcy's incivility and inhumanity towards him, so she thinks at the time, she's not exactly inclined to respect him either. She then finds out that he is the principal reason why Bingley left her sister, and not only is he not making her life better, not strengthening her, he, to her understanding, is actively making the lives of people she loves worse. So, sanctifying friend that she respects, no. But then comes the great Uno reverse, the letter, where he details his perspective on the Jane and Bingley affair, and also the fact that potato chip man has been lying to her. And we see that Elizabeth realizes, ooh, maybe I have been a little bit prejudiced towards this man. And when they meet again at Pemberley, his amazing estate, Elizabeth is anxious to please, particularly when she is met with such civility on his end. And we're told that Darcy is determined to be pleased by her. So now they're enjoying each other. They are determined to enjoy each other. They want to be in each other's presence. And this gets to the question of, does she respect him? After that initial run-in at Pemberley, Elizabeth is lying in bed thinking she certainly did not hate him. No, hatred had vanished long ago, and she had almost as long been ashamed of ever feeling a dislike against him that could be so called. The respect created by the conviction of his valuable qualities, though at first unwillingly admitted, had for some time ceased to be repugnant to her feeling, and it was now heightened into somewhat of a friendlier nature by the testimony so highly in his favor, and bringing forward his disposition in so amiable a light, which yesterday had produced. But above all, above respect and esteem, there was a motive within her of goodwill which could not be overlooked. It was gratitude. Gratitude not merely for having once loved her, but for loving her still, well enough to forgive all the petulance and acrimony of her manner in rejecting him, and all the unjust accusations accompanying her rejection. He, who she had been persuaded would avoid her as his greatest enemy, seemed on this accidental meeting most eager to preserve the acquaintance. Girl, he doesn't just want to preserve the acquaintance, he wants to put a ring on it. But we can see here, Elizabeth respects him, has friendly feelings towards him, and more than respects him. And to this question of, is he an iron-sharpening iron man? Page 330, Elizabeth, she now began to comprehend that Mr. Darcy was exactly the man who, in disposition and talents, would most suit her. His understanding and temper, though unlike her own, would have answered all her wishes. It was a union that must have been to the advantage of both. By her ease and liveliness, his mind might have been softened, his manners improved, and from his judgment, information, and knowledge of the world, she must have received benefit of a greater importance. So clearly, she believes that he is going to be an iron-sharpening iron man. And the thing is, Darcy feels the exact same way about Elizabeth. Page 388. Darcy confesses that yes, he was prideful and conceited and selfish and overbearing, and he says, "Such was I from 8 to 28, and such I might still have been, but for you, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth. What do I not owe you? You taught me a lesson, hard indeed at first, but most advantageous. By you I was properly humbled. I came to you without a doubt of my reception. You showed me how insufficient were all my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased." I don't know if this will focus, but when I read this book, I wrote swoon in the margins. Because I'm like, we love a man who admits that he can be sharpened by a woman. That it's not we're looking just for an iron-sharpening iron man, but he should be looking for an iron-sharpening iron woman. And here, Elizabeth was whittling away his rough edges, and he gives her credit. So they get engaged, but no one else knows what's going on. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole entire story, because when Elizabeth goes to her dad to tell him that, yes, she wants to marry him, he is disbelieving, because hitherto Mr. Darcy has been understood to be a prideful, conceited butthead, for lack of a better word, and Mr. Bennet cannot understand the attachment. Elizabeth tells him, "Have you any other objection," said Elizabeth, "than your belief of my indifference?" "None at all," said Mr. Bennet. "We all know him to be a proud, unpleasant sort of man, but this would be nothing if you really liked him." I do like him," Elizabeth replied, with tears in her eyes. "I love him. Indeed, he has no improper pride. He is perfectly amiable. You do not know what he really is." In the film, with Donald Sutherland and Keira Knightley as Mr. Bennet and Elizabeth, I love this interaction because she tells him, if you knew what he was like, what he's done. And Mr. Bennet asks,
"What has he done?"
And she tells him. And Elizabeth details how Mr. Darcy is the reason that Wickham married Lydia. because he had no intention of doing that beforehand, aka the reason why their entire family was saved from social shame. Mr. Darcy bore all the expense. He paid Wickham's debts and gave him some money so that he and Lydia wouldn't be penniless, and he bore, as Elizabeth notes, several mortifications in doing that, in having to interact with Wickham at all, and having to bribe and cajole the woman who had been responsible for almost Mr. Darcy's own sister's ruin. And it's just like, if you knew what he was like, and now you know what he's like and what he's done. And at that point, Mr. Bennet rightly gives his hearty assent and felicitations for this union. And why wouldn't Mr. Bennet? Because Mr. Darcy is a sanctifying friend that Elizabeth can respect. But if you think Mr. Darcy is great, and he is, let me just tell you about Jesus, who, like Mr. Darcy, bore all the expense and endured not just mortification, but crucifixion in order to save us, not just from social ruin, but from eternal death. That is our man in Jesus. Colossians 2 says that he canceled the debt that was against us and opposed to us and has taken it away by nailing it to the cross. You want a sanctifying friend that you can respect? Who is more sanctifying? Who is going to be an iron sharpening iron man, like the sword of the Spirit? Who's going to make you more like Jesus than Jesus? Who's going to be a friend to you like him? Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times. Jeremiah 31:3 says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Jesus. And also John 15:15, I no longer call you servants, but I have called you friends. We can be friends with Jesus. And respect? How could you not respect a man who, per Philippians 2:5-11 says, he did not count equality with God as something to be grasped, but he made himself nothing, taking on the appearance of a servant, and being found as a man, he humbled himself even to death on a cross. And it is for this reason that God gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord. So, every knee is going to respect this man. Everyone is going to have to bow before him. So yes, Mr. Darcy is great, a sanctifying friend that you respect. Jesus is the sanctifying man that all creation will respect in the end. And so, for my girlies out there who, like me, have maybe never been in a romantic relationship, maybe think that you are eking ever closer to Charlotte Lucas old maid territory, no money, no prospects, already a burden on your parents, do not be afraid. Do not settle for anything less than a sanctifying friend that you respect. And frankly, for those of us who know the Lord, we are the bride of Christ. So we're already engaged, and we don't ever have to say the words, I'm engaged to Mr. Collins. No. We are engaged to Jesus, sanctifying friend who I respect 100%. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was edifying, encouraging, and entertaining for you. And I hope that you will continue to join me as I visit many good books, but live in the Bible.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best thought, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light.
I can kind of say that in Hebrew. I've been kicked in the rosh by a soos.